Hi everybody, I've done several videos about how I use this watercolor paper for little pouring, practice pouring, testing out paint color combinations, but I haven't actually done a pour for a video on paper. So I'm going to do a couple of pours today just to show you how it works on paper. It's really simple. One reason I like this is a very inexpensive, it's 140 pound watercolor paper. It's not very heavy, so it does buckle a little bit, but it's like 50 cents a sheet. So this is a great way to start if you're just starting out. Maybe you're a little bit scared. You don't want to break out the big canvas. These papers are really good to work with. And I'll have a link in the description below this video to everything I'm using today, including this paper. So let me show you the paper. I put a coat of gesso always on this paper before I use it. Watercolor paper is absorbent, and you don't want the paint absorbing into the paper. You want the paint to move around on top so you can get it to spread. So this one already has a dry coat of gesso on it, and if you'll notice it curls up a little bit. Not a big deal. That's because this is only 140 pound. It's inexpensive, so you're having to deal with the inexpensive paper, but it does work very well. I can curl this down just a little bit. So I'm going to do a couple of pours today. The first one, I'm going to create a little dirty pour with some leftover paint I have from a previous pour. These are random color choices. I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about it. I just looked and saw what I had, and I'm just going to create a little dirty pour for this paper demo. And of course I always stir it to make sure it's good. These individual colors already have silicone in them. This is the silicone I use. Again, the link to this will be in the description below the video. I put a few drops of silicone in each color. I tend to not put silicone in the white just to have it, just so I know if I have a color, there's silicone in it. And if you're not sure if you have put silicone in something, you put a little S on your cup. You can write down what you've done. So today I have a 5-ounce cup, which it works really well for this 9x12 paper. And I'm going to just create a little dirty pour first in this little cup. You can usually tell if you've got a nice dirty pour going by, you see these colors separate and rise up in the cup as you're doing this. It's kind of an indicator of how it's going to look. And I always add a little white. Okay, so 5-ounce cup, it looks like about 4 ounces of paint. I'm going to do a flip cup today. And if you haven't seen a flip cup, putting the paper on top of the cup, this can be done with a canvas or a board or anything. Flip it over, just set it down, just give it just a moment to drop, and then we're going to pull it up. That's very nice. And just let it roll around now, just like you would on a canvas. This is quite a bit of paint for this paper. Probably 3 ounces would be enough. But that's okay. I'm just using excess paint, so I'm not too worried about it. Now I'm going to let it go ahead and run off so I get nice coverage here. See, I like this area right here. I like these pinks and yellows. So I want to get the coverage, but I don't want to lose this. That's always the trick. If you see something you like, then you want to kind of figure out a way to get coverage yet save it. So I'm going to see if I can save this. It's going to be tricky because that's my favorite part right now, is right this corner. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I got the coverage now. I'm going to tilt it back this way. Let some of this pink run back. So that's kind of a wild looking deal there, but all I have to do now is set it down and give it a couple days to dry. At least one day, probably two. This is a pretty heavy pour. Here is the results of the first pour. It's been sitting here for a few minutes. I wanted you to see it. It'll take a couple days to dry. It's a pretty heavy pour, but that's what it looks like right now. So next, I'm going to do a swipe on a fresh piece of paper. And I always try and bend it a little bit, flatten it out, particularly for this swipe technique. If you want, for this type of technique, you can tape this down, the little corners, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go forward with a swipe. And again, I have some different colors this time, but these are all still leftover colors from a previous pour. There's a couple blues, a pink, and a gold. We'll see what happens. So this is going to be a swipe. And then, of course, the white is right here, which I'll be using for the swipe color. Just random. I tend to cross over my colors a little bit. Don't have to fill up the whole paper with it because it's going to be drug across. And there's some gold. I'm going to put gold in a couple of different places. Just have a little bit left. No shame in letting it drip. You might as well use it up. Let me see. I'm going to look and see if I want to add a little bit more before I put the white down. Maybe a little bit of dark blue one more time. Okay. Now here comes the white for the swipe color. I put plenty up there because I want to make sure it makes it all the way to the end. But if it doesn't, I can always add some. I'm using a small spatula to swipe with, but you can use an index card or anything you have on hand, a piece of paper. And I'm swiping lightly. I'm dragging the white down over the top of the colors. There's silicone in all these colors, which helps create these cells, and that's the fun part. And I need my paper towel. I wipe off my spatula between swipes just so I have a clean start. I like making several swipes. Some people try and get a tool that's wide enough to just make one swipe, but I kind of enjoy this process, so I'm using a shorter tool and swiping. This will be 3 times. And then you can also go backwards. You get some different effects that way. There's no rules. We're having fun with this. This is one of my favorite techniques because things happen before your eyes. I'm covering up a little blank space there. Okay, now I'm looking at it. What do I want to do? It's obviously not much happening here. I could torch it, but I like getting cells without the torch if I can, so I'm just going to do a little a little design here, just kind of create a pattern. See, we're getting some nice cells in these areas here. And you can switch tools too. You can start out with a spatula and then switch to an index card. But the important thing is I'm using a really light touch, and it does take a little bit of practice. If you go down too hard, you're going to wipe out most of the white, which actually can be interesting, but the idea here is to have the color come up through the white. I've done some other swipe videos too that you can check out. This is just the first one that I've shown you that's actually done on paper. So let me see. So that's pretty interesting. Don't need to do a whole lot more. And again, if you're swiping for the first time, this paper is a great way to practice. And for the sake of demo, I think I'm going to torch this just a little bit. We'll see what happens. I just want to show you what the torch can do. And yes, you can torch paper. So I'm going to turn the torch on right now. And I'm not going to torch it very much, just for a few seconds. So it brought up a few more cells. And a few more cells will probably develop, but this is probably good. And if you want, you can move this to a new location to get away from the paint that you've swiped onto your table. But anyway, this will dry like this. It'll probably warp and maybe curl a little bit because it's such a heavy application of paint for this weight of paper. So if it warps, if it curls, give it a couple days, it'll settle back down. It really will. You'll think, some of them, sometimes it warps more than others, it'll really curl, and you think, well, how can I ever use this? But give it a couple days, it'll flatten back out. And so have fun with this technique. This is such an inexpensive way to have some fun with pouring. You're gonna, if you start using this, you'll get addicted. You'll have a stack of paintings before you know it. And I have related videos. I've done several videos about using paper for paint pouring, and they are all, the links will be in the description below this video. So thanks for watching. I hope you try this paper. Thanks for subscribing. Really appreciate all the comments. Feel free to comment. If I forgot to discuss something, ask me a question in the comments and I'll try to answer. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you in the next video.